$27 billion. That's the amount that the United States government spent in the Apollo program during the time period of 1960 to 1971. Hello. Good morning. My name is Alejandro Quintero.
My name is Marty Francesco.
My name is Luis Morrow.
My name is Karen Berkeley. Throughout our presentation, we will assess to what extent did the United States investment in space exploration from 1950 to 1990 set the stage for future exploration.
Our argument is that the investment the United States made during the Cold War in space explorations, though it was valuable to the country, it still had management issues, and with that, the contribution, it didn't seem to contribute to the next missions, and those seemed as ineffective.
Pictured here is a timeline overview of the U.S. space program from 1958 to 1972. In 1958, NASA is founded by President Eisenhower. In 1960, the Apollo program is first conceived. In 1961, John F. Kennedy becomes president. And in 1962, John F. Kennedy delivers his famous speech at Rice University titled, "We Choose to Go to the Moon." In 1963, Kennedy is tragically assassinated, and Lyndon B. Johnson becomes president. And in 1964, programs such as the War on Poverty and Civil Rights Act prompt Congress to consider limiting NASA's budget. In 1965, the U.S. escalates its presence in Vietnam, putting a further strain on the U.S. space program. And in 1967, the Apollo 1 program suffers an electrical failure that sets the space program back 1 year.
In 1968, Zond 5 was launched by the USSR. The Zond 5 circled the moon and landed back on Earth. This accelerated the momentum of the Apollo program until 1969, when the Apollo 11 spacecraft landed on the surface of the moon. Not long after, in 1972, the Space Shuttle program was designed, signifying the end of the Apollo program and the start of a new one.
The main cause for the purpose of reaching the moon was due to the ideology created by America, as they saw as their purpose to reach for the moon, and John F. Kennedy was a major influence in justifying the investments being poured into the space race during the Cold War. At Rice University, the president gave his famous speech announcing the efforts being made to constructing the nation which he desired. The speech aimed to build a nationalist idea where to pursue the people into standing by him and the idea of America he believed in. Many were moved by this and realized that this isn't just a publicity stunt, but a stepping stone for America to be feared and established as a country of the brave. As he states here, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard.
The creation of NASA was greatly exemplified by the launch of Sputnik 1 by the Soviet Union on October 4th, 1957. According to Eugene M., the first historian in NASA's history and an American Air Force pilot during World War II, he says, when Sputnik 1 was launched into orbit by the Soviet Union on October 4th, 1957, the United States began an extensive consideration of its role as a nation in the exploration of space. This ultimately culminated in President Eisenhower on July 29th, 1958, setting the National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958, as seen below.
Behind me is a year-by-year cost analysis of the Apollo program from 1960 to 1973. The Apollo program was the primary set of space missions from about 1962, the year Kennedy famously delivered his speech, to 1969, the year Apollo 11 successfully lands on the moon. Note that from the years 1964 to 1969, the years Johnson was president, funding was at its highest.
Wernher von Braun, a renowned rocket developer for the Apollo program, said in an interview in 1968 at Ball State University that the Apollo application program was specifically designed to make maximum use of the hardware developed in conjunction with the Apollo program. He also added that the technology developed in the Apollo program would provide certain benefits, like cameras that would observe Earth's resources, and also spacecrafts that would help provide information about different resources in the Earth. The NASA's history development articulated that in 1970, the Apollo program launched an Ivy workshop in 1970, including biomedical labs, lunar mapping, and survey systems. However, the $450 million budget for the Apollo application program led the budgeting bureau to create the man orbiting laboratory.
It can be concluded that politics was the primary reason for the fast development of the space program, exacerbated by conflict with Russia ever since Sputnik's launch. This, paired with Kennedy's promise to reach the moon in just 7 years, largely justifies the high cost of $27 billion because of the short time frame the project operated under. As such, the positive results from the missions, such as the Apollo applications program, become more striking. Even with this seemingly promising legacy, only about half of Americans support future manned aircraft missions in the present day. It's clear that change needs to come to the present-day space program to win public support or streamline mission development. Our question was, what approach should the present-day US space program use for future missions in space? We found 2 possible approaches, each with their own unique limitations. We will analyze the effectiveness of these approaches in the context of the Cold War.
The first solution to that problem would be completing projects over longer periods of time. This allows for more time for more trials, and especially safety trials, so that we can avoid another tragedy as the Apollo 1 tragedy in 1967. It also provides better goal setting and organization opportunities, so the program is better planned out for the future, and then research is also better planned out, so it's better to sell to the government, who ultimately is going to end up funding the program.
But with this solution, it also comes with many problems, as any of the future presidents would have to abide with this new policy. And without any instant results, funding and public interest may decrease.
There's some projects with this approach. The first project with this approach that we decided to bring up is the International Space Station. The International Space Station, previously to being launched on November 20th, 1998, was in the works for 10 years. And the ISS, to this day, is still up in space and will be up there till 2030, until when ultimately it will crash into the Atlantic Ocean. The ISS has had many projects and many scientific investigations on the effects of gravity on astronauts, research on the moon, and just general research about the atmosphere of space. Furthermore, another project with this approach would be the New Horizons probe. The New Horizons probe team was founded on December of 2000, just 2000, and in November 2001, NASA approved it as part of the New Frontiers program. Finally, it was launched on January 19, 2006. According to Brainbridge, a PhD student at the University of Chicago, since its launch in 2006, New Horizons' journeys through the solar system has been filled with historical firsts. After zooming past the outer planets in record time, this NASA probe has successfully captured the first ever close-up image of Pluto and its moon in 2015.
Space missions with slower paced funding models can take decades to complete and span several presidential administrations. That means that if 2 administrations or Congresses are at odds with each other, any space program spanning them may not come to full fruition. President Eisenhower, for example, was very critical of the direction the Apollo program took after his successor, President Kennedy, took office.
Another solution we came up with was having more lucrative projects, as it could receive more public support, and with that also creating self-sustaining projects that could contribute more into the economy.
The limitation to this solution is that it can limit other projects, like projects to travel to the moon in the near future, like in 2024 with the first female astronaut to reach the moon, and mainly for private political interest. meaning it can limit the public interest of the NASA program and therefore not take into account what the public may want. According to this fiscal year, 2023 fiscal year total budgetary resources and obligations in billions, NASA spent $1.2 billion on space technology, one of NASA's most profitable accounts. They spent $7.6 million on exploration. It would prove beneficial for them to support more technological investments, as it could increase the amount of profits that NASA would make. However, research at Pew University indicates that 65% of people believe that NASA should only be the people involved in implementing these types of policies, instead of letting private interests like tech companies engage in investment in NASA.
Efforts made by the U.S. were seen as extravagant and unnecessary for the period of the country the time was set in. As shown here, as the dollar value in 2010, Apollo cost about $151 billion, and in comparison, the Manhattan Project cost $28 billion, and the Panama Canal only costed about $8.1 billion. With this comparison, it goes to show how abundant the expense of the Apollo missions were to the country.
To utilize the funding of the United States to its full potential, NASA should eliminate risky ventures by completing projects over longer durations. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Slide together. All right, Ale, we'll start with you. Ale, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the topic you guys identified?
I personally feel that Mauro's economic approach to the problem greatly opened my eyes to how much money truly was spent during the Apollo program and during the Cold War United States space investments.
Okay. Was there anyone's information you didn't use in your presentation, and if so, why?
Well, we didn't use Luis's idea about how the NASA program increased STEM education, because we didn't feel like it fit into the limitations and solutions for our problem. Primarily because it's a little off topic for what they spend a lot of their money on, considering it's just a social implication of continued interest in space.
All right. And Louis, if there was a fifth member of your team, what could they have brought to the conversation that would have made things better?
Another perspective that we collectively wanted to imply was foreign, a foreign perspective, like the Soviet, like how they treated the Cold War and how they used their money in the space race.
Okay. Mauro, thinking about your research, what's the best way that you can think that your team's resolution makes you think differently about the research you conducted?
Well, our team's resolution made me realize that space policy is really just a trade-off. There's no correct solution to tackle this problem.